the person you love cried alone last night because they finally understood the truth? There are moments in life that no one witnesses. No audience, no applause, no comforting words. Just a quiet room, a restless heart, and tears that refuse to stop falling. Last night may have been one of those moments for the person you love. While the world slept peacefully, they were fighting a battle that no one else could see. They were not crying because they were weak. They were crying because the truth had finally become impossible to ignore. For so long, they may have hidden behind distractions, pride, fear, or the belief that there would always be another chance. They convinced themselves that their feelings could be buried, that time would erase what their heart kept whispering. But truth has a remarkable way of finding us. It waits patiently beneath every excuse, every unanswered message, every missed opportunity, and every silent goodbye. Then, in one unforgettable moment, it rises to the surface and demands to be seen. What happens when someone finally realizes the value of a love they underestimated? What happens when they understand that genuine connection cannot be replaced, manufactured, or forgotten? The heart begins to speak louder than the mind. Every memory returns with new meaning. Every word left unsaid echoes through the silence. Every decision is suddenly viewed through the painful lens of clarity. The tears are not simply tears of sadness, they are tears of awakening. But this message is about something even greater than another person's emotions. It is about the invisible power of truth. It is about how every human being eventually arrives at a crossroads where illusions collapse and reality stands alone. No matter how long someone runs from their deepest feelings, there comes a night when they can no longer pretend. The masks fall away, the walls begin to crack. The heart demands honesty. If you have ever wondered whether people truly recognize the impact of the love they receive, stay with me. If you have ever questioned whether sincere love leaves a lasting imprint on someone's soul, this message will challenge everything you thought you knew. Because tonight we are not talking about revenge, manipulation, or making someone regret their choices. We are talking about the quiet transformation that happens when truth finally enters the room. Sometimes the greatest breakthrough doesn't happen with dramatic words or grand gestures. Sometimes it begins with a single tear falling in the darkness when no one is watching. That tear becomes the beginning of wisdom. It becomes the end of denial. It becomes the first step toward healing, understanding, and genuine love. So open your heart, quiet the noise around you, and prepare to look beyond appearances. What you're about to hear is not merely a story about someone crying alone. It is a story about awakening, redemption, and the extraordinary moment when love is finally seen for what it has always been, a force that patiently waits for truth to reveal its undeniable power. The silent night of awakening. There comes a moment in every person's life when the noise of the world fades away, distractions lose their power, and the heart is left alone with the truth it has been trying to avoid. It rarely happens in the middle of a busy day. It usually arrives in the stillness of the night when there is no one to impress, no conversation to hide behind, and no place left to run. It is in those quiet hours that the deepest realizations begin. Imagine someone sitting alone, staring into the darkness, unable to sleep, because every memory they once pushed aside has returned with unexpected clarity. The silence feels louder than any voice they have ever heard. Every laugh they shared with someone they loved, every opportunity they let slip away, every moment they assumed would always be there, suddenly carries a weight they never noticed before. This is not a punishment, it is an awakening. The heart has a remarkable way of bringing forgotten truths back into focus. When the mind can no longer silence them, many people spend years convincing themselves that they are unaffected by what they truly feel. They bury emotions beneath work, entertainment, endless responsibilities, or the constant pursuit of the next achievement. They tell themselves they have moved on, that the past no longer matters, and that emotions are simply obstacles to overcome. Yet the heart does not operate according to denial. It patiently waits until the perfect moment to reveal what has always existed beneath the surface. That revelation can arrive without warning. A familiar song, an old photograph, an unexpected dream, or even an ordinary evening can unlock emotions that seemed forgotten. Suddenly, every wall that took years to build begins to crumble. The tears that follow are not merely signs of sadness, they are evidence that the soul has stopped pretending. One of the greatest misconceptions about emotional awakening is that it only belongs to people who are weak. In reality, acknowledging the truth often requires far greater courage than avoiding it. It is easy to distract yourself from uncomfortable feelings. It is much harder to sit alone and honestly admit what your heart has known all along. Real strength is found in facing reality without excuses. It is found in recognizing mistakes without becoming imprisoned by them. It is found in allowing yourself to feel deeply instead of constantly protecting yourself from vulnerability. Those quiet tears become symbols of honesty. They wash away layers of pride, fear, and emotional resistance that have accumulated over time. In that moment, the person is no longer fighting the truth. They are finally allowing it to speak. Yet this awakening is about more than another person's emotions. It serves as a reminder that every human being experiences moments when life demands honesty. We all reach crossroads where our assumptions are challenged and our priorities are exposed. Sometimes we discover that what we chased so relentlessly never brought lasting fulfillment. Sometimes we realize that the relationships we neglected carried more value than the possessions we worked so hard to obtain. Sometimes we understand that genuine love cannot be replaced by temporary excitement or constant distraction. These realizations often arrive quietly, without dramatic announcements. They emerge in the privacy of reflection, where no audience exists and no performance is necessary. The remarkable thing about awakening is that it changes the way people see everything around them. What once appeared insignificant suddenly becomes precious. Conversations once taken for granted become treasured memories. Acts of kindness that seemed ordinary reveal extraordinary meaning. The presence of someone who consistently offered patience, understanding, and compassion becomes impossible to overlook. This shift in perspective is one of life's greatest teachers. It reminds us that value is often recognized only after comfort disappears. We begin to understand that love is not measured by grand gestures, but by the countless quiet moments that shape our lives every day. At the same time, this awakening offers an important lesson for anyone listening today. Your peace cannot depend on whether another person reaches this realization. Your worth does not increase or decrease according to someone else's understanding. Genuine confidence is built from knowing who you are, continuing to grow, and living with integrity regardless of how others respond. While people may eventually recognize what they overlooked, your purpose is not to wait in emotional paralysis for that moment to arrive. Your responsibility is to keep becoming the best version of yourself, allowing love, wisdom, and resilience to shape your own journey. That is why the silent night of awakening is so powerful. It is not simply about tears falling in the darkness. It is about illusions giving way to truth. It is about hearts becoming honest enough to admit what pride once denied. It is about discovering that authentic love leaves a lasting imprint that cannot easily be erased. Whether this awakening leads to reconciliation, forgiveness, or simply personal growth, it marks the beginning of something new. Every sunrise that follows such a night carries the possibility of greater wisdom, deeper compassion, and a life built on authenticity instead of denial. The quiet tears of one evening can become the first chapter of a transformation that changes everything. Because every lasting change begins with one courageous decision to stop running from the truth and finally allow it to illuminate the heart. The truth they could no longer deny. There is a powerful difference between knowing something in your mind and finally accepting it in your heart. A person can spend months, even years, convincing themselves that they have forgotten someone, that they no longer care, or that life is better without the connection they once cherished. They can repeat those thoughts until they almost believe them. But the heart has a language of its own, and sooner or later it begins to speak with a clarity that cannot be silenced. This is the moment when the truth they tried to escape becomes impossible to deny. Every excuse that once felt convincing begins to lose its power. Every justification starts to crumble. The stories they told themselves no longer provide comfort because reality has quietly replaced illusion. They finally realize that genuine emotions cannot be erased simply because they are inconvenient. They can be ignored for a season, but they cannot remain buried forever. Many people mistake emotional distance for emotional freedom. They believe that by creating space, avoiding conversations, or refusing to acknowledge their feelings, they have somehow conquered them. Yet avoidance is not healing. Silence is not always peace. Sometimes silence is simply a place where unresolved emotions wait patiently until they are ready to be heard. Life has an interesting way of exposing this truth. It often happens when everything else becomes quiet. Success no longer feels as satisfying as expected. Achievements fail to fill the emptiness inside. The excitement of new experiences fades, leaving a question that refuses to disappear. Why does this person still remain in my thoughts? That question marks the beginning of honesty. It is the first crack in the wall they built around their heart. One of the greatest truths people eventually discover is that genuine love cannot be replaced by temporary distractions. New routines, new faces, and new ambitions may occupy the mind, but they cannot erase what the soul has deeply experienced. Real connection leaves an imprint that time alone cannot remove. It becomes part of who we are because it changes the way we see ourselves and the world around us. That realization often arrives unexpectedly. A familiar place brings back forgotten memories. A certain fragrance reminds them of happier days. A random conversation echoes words they once heard from the person they loved. Suddenly, they understand that what they tried so hard to escape has quietly remained with them all along. The truth has been waiting patiently, not demanding attention, but refusing to disappear. Perhaps the hardest truth to accept is recognizing how often fear disguises itself as logic. Pride tells people to protect themselves from rejection. Ego encourages them to appear unaffected. Fear whispers that vulnerability is dangerous and that keeping emotions hidden is the safest path. Yet those defenses often become the very prison that keeps people from experiencing the love they desire most. When they finally understand this, regret can feel overwhelming. They begin replaying conversations they wish they had handled differently. They think about the opportunities they missed to express appreciation, to apologize, or simply to be present. They recognize that the greatest losses in life are not always caused by hatred, but by hesitation, pride, and the mistaken belief that there will always be another opportunity. However, this realization should never be viewed only through the lens of sadness. Truth, even when painful, is one of life's greatest gifts. It clears away illusions and allows people to see themselves honestly. Growth cannot begin while someone is living in denial. Healing cannot begin while someone continues pretending they feel nothing. The tears that accompany this moment are not signs of defeat. They are evidence that the heart has finally chosen honesty over self-deception. That honesty creates the possibility for change. Whether they seek forgiveness, choose to express their feelings, or simply become a kinder and more self-aware person, everything begins with accepting reality instead of resisting it. There is also an important lesson for you within this truth. Never measure your value by another person's delay in recognizing it. Sometimes people need time to understand what they had because maturity often arrives through experience, loss, and reflection. That journey belongs to them, not to you. Your responsibility is not to force someone to see your worth. Your responsibility is to continue becoming someone who lives with confidence, compassion, and authenticity. The right people will eventually recognize those qualities, and those who fail to do so are simply revealing where they are in their own journey. You cannot rush another person's awakening, just as no one could rush yours. Life teaches us that truth always arrives, even if it takes longer than expected. It has a quiet persistence that outlasts pride, excuses, and denial. It waits until the heart becomes ready to listen. When that day comes, everything changes. Priorities shift. Conversations gain new meaning. Relationships are viewed through clearer eyes. The person who once seemed ordinary is recognized as extraordinary. Love that was taken for granted is finally appreciated. Whether this realization leads to reconciliation or simply becomes a lesson carried into the future, it transforms the person forever. They can never return to the comfort of ignorance because they have seen what is real. And once truth has illuminated the heart, it becomes impossible to live as though the darkness never existed. That is the power of a truth that can no longer be denied. It breaks every illusion, awakens every hidden emotion, and opens the door to a life built not on fear or pride, but on honesty, wisdom, and the courage to love without pretending. Distant became their greatest teacher there. It is a lesson that closeness sometimes fails to teach, but distance reveals with extraordinary clarity. When someone is constantly present in our lives, it is easy to assume they will always be there. Familiarity can quietly create complacency. We become accustomed to their kindness, their patience, their encouragement, and the simple comfort of knowing they are only a phone call away. We begin to treat what is extraordinary as though it were ordinary. But when that presence is no longer part of our daily life, something remarkable begins to happen. The silence they leave behind starts speaking louder than words ever could. Empty spaces become reminders. Ordinary routines suddenly feel incomplete. The moments once overlooked become the memories that return again and again. Distance has a way of stripping away distractions until all that remains is the truth. It forces people to see what they once ignored and appreciate what they once assumed would never disappear. Many people believe that love is tested only by how close two people remain, but some of the deepest revelations come through separation. It is during absence that emotions are no longer hidden beneath habit or routine. Without the daily conversations, the shared laughter, and the familiar presence of someone who cared deeply, the heart begins asking difficult questions. Why does everything feel different now? Why does success seem less meaningful? Why does every meaningful moment seem incomplete? These questions are not signs of weakness. They are evidence that something valuable has been lost, or at least recognized in a way it never was before. Distance becomes the mirror that reflects what comfort once concealed. One of the greatest ironies of life is that people often understand the value of a blessing only after it is no longer within reach. This does not mean love should be based on regret, nor does it suggest that every separation is meant to end in reunion. Rather, it reminds us that absence has an extraordinary ability to sharpen perspective. When someone who consistently brought peace, encouragement, understanding, and unconditional support is no longer nearby, their influence becomes impossible to overlook. The conversations once considered ordinary become treasured memories. The small acts of kindness that seemed insignificant reveal themselves as priceless expressions of love. What was once taken for granted becomes the very thing the heart longs for most. Dissistent also exposes the difference between temporary attraction and genuine connection. Attraction often fades when convenience disappears. It depends on excitement, novelty, and constant stimulation. Genuine love, however, survives beyond physical presence. It continues to influence thoughts, decisions, and emotions, even when two people are separated by miles, circumstances, or time. That is why someone may find themselves thinking about the same person long after they believed they had moved on. It is not because they are trapped in the past. It is because authentic connections leave lasting impressions on the soul. They shape perspectives, inspire growth, and remind us that some relationships touch places within us that ordinary experiences never can. Yet distance does more than reveal another person's feelings. It transforms the one who is willing to learn from it. Separation has the power to expose weaknesses that remained hidden during comfort. It teaches patience where there was once urgency. It teaches gratitude where there was once entitlement. It teaches humility where pride once stood. A person who truly reflects during seasons of separation begins to recognize their own patterns, mistakes, and missed opportunities. Instead of blaming circumstances or other people, they start asking deeper questions about who they are becoming. They begin to understand that lasting relationships are not sustained by luck, but by appreciation, communication, consistency, and emotional maturity. These lessons cannot always be learned while everything feels secure. Sometimes they require the uncomfortable classroom of distance. For you, this lesson carries a message of hope and strength. If someone has stepped away from your life, do not allow that absence to convince you that your value has diminished. Your worth has never depended on another person's ability to recognize it immediately. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is allow people the space to discover their own truths without chasing them for validation. Growth cannot be forced. Realization cannot be manipulated. Every person has a journey that unfolds in its own time. While they are learning through distance, you are also being invited to grow. You are being called to deepen your confidence, strengthen your character, and continue building a life rooted in purpose rather than uncertainty. There is something profoundly liberating about understanding that love and attachment are not the same. Attachment clings out of fear. Love grows through freedom, respect, and trust. When you stop trying to control every outcome, you create room for life to unfold naturally. If someone truly values the connection you shared, distance will not erase it. Instead, it may become the very experience that awakens their appreciation. If they do not return, the lessons learned will still prepare you for healthier and more authentic relationships in the future. Either way, you do not lose. You gain wisdom, resilience, and a clearer understanding of what genuine love truly requires. In the end, distance is not always the enemy people imagine it to be. Sometimes it is life's greatest teacher. It removes illusions, reveals priorities, and exposes the depth of what the heart genuinely values. It reminds us that presence is a gift, not a guarantee. It teaches us to cherish people while they are with us, instead of assuming there will always be another opportunity. Most importantly, it shows that authentic love is not measured by constant proximity, but by the lasting impact someone leaves on your heart, your character, and your life. The silence of separation may feel painful, but within that silence are lessons capable of transforming regret into gratitude, uncertainty into clarity, and ordinary affection into a profound appreciation for the rare gift of genuine human connection. Inner transformation opens the door to love. The most meaningful love stories are never changed by beautiful words alone, they are transformed by changed hearts. Many people believe that love succeeds because someone finally says the right thing, sends the perfect message, or makes a dramatic gesture. While those moments may be memorable, they are not what creates lasting connection. Real love begins when two people become emotionally honest with themselves. It begins when pride gives way to humility, when fear gives way to courage, and when the desire to protect the ego is replaced by the willingness to protect the relationship. This is the kind of transformation that cannot be forced, rushed, or faked. It happens quietly within the soul, often after long nights of reflection, painful lessons, and moments of deep realization. The tears that fell in the darkness were never the destination, they were the beginning. They softened a heart that had become guarded, opening the door for a completely new way of seeing love, life, and the people who matter most. One of life's greatest truths is that people cannot experience healthy love while carrying the same patterns that once damaged it. If fear controlled every decision before, fear will continue to destroy trust unless it is confronted. If pride prevented honest communication, no relationship can truly flourish until humility takes its place. If insecurity caused constant doubt, no amount of reassurance from another person will ever create lasting peace. External circumstances may change, but unless the inner world changes as well, history has a way of repeating itself. That is why transformation is far more valuable than temporary emotion. Anyone can feel regret for a moment, but lasting change belongs to those who are willing to examine themselves honestly and grow beyond the habits that once held them back. There comes a point when a person realizes that blaming others no longer brings peace. It becomes easier to point fingers than to look into the mirror. But true maturity begins the moment someone accepts responsibility for their own choices. They recognize the conversations they avoided, the affection they failed to express, the appreciation they forgot to show, and the opportunities they allowed to pass because they assumed there would always be more time. This realization is not meant to create shame. It is meant to awaken wisdom. Every mistake becomes a teacher. Every disappointment becomes a lesson. Every painful memory becomes an invitation to become someone wiser, kinder, and more emotionally present than before. Growth begins when excuses end in transformation also changes the way people define love itself. Many enter relationships believing love is about receiving constant attention, validation, or emotional security. They expect another person to heal every wound and satisfy every unmet need. But genuine love is not built upon dependence, it is built upon wholeness. When someone begins healing from within, they no longer approach relationships with desperation or fear of abandonment. Instead, they bring peace instead of pressure, understanding instead of control, and confidence instead of insecurity. They stop asking, "How can this person complete me?" and begin asking, "How can I become a healthier, more loving version of myself?" That single shift changes everything, because healthy relationships grow strongest when two people choose one another from a place of fullness rather than emptiness. Transformation also teaches the importance of forgiveness. Many people misunderstand forgiveness as pretending that pain never existed, but true forgiveness is far more powerful than denial. It is the decision to stop allowing yesterday's wounds to dictate tomorrow's possibilities. It does not always mean returning to the same relationship, nor does it excuse harmful behavior. Instead, forgiveness frees the heart from carrying unnecessary bitterness. It allows healing to replace resentment and hope to replace hopelessness. A person who has genuinely transformed understands that holding on to anger only extends the life of the pain. Releasing it creates room for joy, wisdom, and emotional freedom. At the same time, this journey is not only about the person who finally recognized the truth, it is about you as well. While someone else may be learning valuable lessons through reflection and regret, you are also being invited into your own season of transformation. Perhaps life is asking you to strengthen your confidence, deepen your patience, or trust your own worth without constantly seeking confirmation from others. Perhaps it is teaching you that your happiness cannot depend on whether another person changes. The greatest gift you can give yourself is becoming someone whose peace is rooted within, rather than determined by external circumstances. When your identity is grounded in self-respect, compassion, and authenticity, you naturally attract healthier relationships because you are no longer willing to settle for less than what aligns with your values. The beautiful truth is that transformation rarely announces itself with dramatic fanfare. It reveals itself in quiet choices made consistently over time. It appears when someone chooses honesty instead of avoidance, patience instead of impulsiveness, kindness instead of resentment, and understanding instead of judgment. These small decisions reshape character, and character ultimately shapes destiny. Love becomes stronger because the individuals within it have become stronger. Communication becomes healthier because honesty has replaced fear. Trust becomes deeper because actions now reflect genuine integrity. What once seemed impossible gradually becomes natural because the foundation has changed from the inside out. As this journey continues, remember that lasting love is never sustained by emotions alone. Feelings rise and fall with circumstances, but transformed hearts remain steady. They know that true love is expressed through consistency, respect, sacrifice, compassion, and unwavering honesty. When someone has experienced genuine inner transformation, they no longer chase illusions or cling to temporary pleasures. They recognize the priceless value of authentic connection and understand that the strongest relationships are built not by perfect people, but by imperfect people who are willing to grow. In the end, the greatest miracle is not simply that someone cried, realized the truth, or desired another chance. The greatest miracle is that they allowed the truth to change them from within. Because when the heart truly transforms, it opens the door to a love that is deeper, wiser, stronger, and far more enduring than anything pride or fear could ever create. The new chapter begins with truth, not illusion. Every meaningful journey reaches a moment when the past can no longer define the future. After the tears have fallen, after the silence has spoken, after distance has revealed its lessons, and after the heart has been transformed, there comes a choice. It is the choice to continue living according to old fears and familiar illusions, or to step boldly into a new chapter built upon truth. This decision changes everything. Many people believe that a new beginning starts when circumstances change, but lasting change begins when perspective changes. A different relationship, a different city, or a different season of life will never create lasting peace if the same patterns continue to rule the heart. The greatest transformation occurs when someone finally understands that truth is not something to fear, it is something that sets the soul free. Once the truth is embraced, every decision begins to reflect greater wisdom, deeper compassion, and a clearer understanding of what truly matters. One of the greatest illusions people carry is the belief that love is something they must constantly chase or force into existence. They imagine that if they say enough, prove enough, or sacrifice enough, another person will eventually become the partner they hope for. But genuine love cannot grow in the soil of fear and desperation. It flourishes where there is honesty, mutual respect, emotional maturity, and freedom. The strongest relationships are not built by people trying to convince each other of their worth. They are built by two individuals who already recognize their own value and choose to meet one another with openness, kindness, and sincerity. That is why truth becomes the foundation of every lasting connection. It removes the need for pretending, performing, or manipulating. It allows love to exist exactly as it was meant to exist, freely and authentically. Perhaps the person who cried alone last night finally realized that love cannot survive where pride refuses to bend. Perhaps they understood that silence is not always strength, that avoiding vulnerability does not protect the heart, and that waiting too long to express gratitude often leads to unnecessary regret. These realizations are painful, but they are also deeply valuable because they mark the end of illusion. They reveal that meaningful relationships require courage. They require honest conversations, genuine appreciation, consistent effort, and the humility to admit when we have been wrong. Once these lessons are learned, the heart is no longer interested in superficial connections or temporary excitement. It begins searching for something deeper, something rooted in truth rather than appearance. For you, this message carries an equally powerful invitation. Your future does not depend upon another person's awakening. It does not depend upon whether someone eventually understands your value or returns with greater clarity. Your future depends upon the choices you make today. You have the opportunity to release old disappointments, forgive yourself for moments when you doubted your own worth, and stop allowing yesterday's experiences to determine tomorrow's possibilities. Every sunrise offers a fresh beginning, not because the past disappears, but because you become wiser than you were before. Wisdom transforms pain into purpose. It turns disappointment into direction. It teaches you that every experience, even the difficult ones, has prepared you for a healthier and more authentic future. There is extraordinary freedom in letting go of the need to control every outcome. So often, people exhaust themselves trying to predict what another person will think, feel, or decide. They become trapped in endless questions that steal the joy of the present moment. Yet life becomes lighter when you trust that what is truly meant for you will never require you to abandon your dignity, your peace, or your self-respect. Genuine love does not ask you to become someone else. It invites you to become more fully yourself. It celebrates honesty rather than perfection. It values growth rather than appearances. It creates security rather than constant confusion. When you understand this, you stop chasing uncertainty and begin embracing the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your worth. The beautiful truth is that every ending contains the possibility of a greater beginning. Sometimes that beginning is the restoration of a relationship that has been strengthened by wisdom and maturity. Sometimes it is the courage to walk away from what no longer aligns with your values. Sometimes it is discovering a completely unexpected path that leads to opportunities and relationships far greater than anything you previously imagined. No matter how the story unfolds, truth becomes your greatest guide. It protects you from settling for less than authentic love. It reminds you that peace is more valuable than constant emotional struggle. It teaches you that the right connections inspire growth instead of fear and encourage freedom instead of control. As this message comes to a close, remember that every heart eventually encounters a moment of awakening. Some experience it through joy, others through disappointment, and many through quiet nights of reflection that no one else ever sees. But regardless of how it arrives, truth always has the power to transform. It softens hardened hearts, restores forgotten hope, and reveals what truly deserves our time, energy, and devotion. The person who cried alone last night may have finally understood what they had overlooked for so long. They may have recognized the depth of a love they once underestimated. But the greater story is not about their tears. It is about what those tears awakened within them. So step forward into your own new chapter with confidence. Release every illusion that has convinced you that you are not enough. Refuse to measure your worth by another person's timing or choices. Continue becoming someone whose life reflects honesty, compassion, resilience, and quiet strength. Let truth shape your decisions, let wisdom guide your relationships, and let love flow from a heart that no longer needs fear to feel secure. Because when truth becomes the foundation of your life, every ending becomes a doorway to a greater beginning, every lesson becomes a blessing in disguise, and every step forward leads you closer to the peace, purpose, and authentic love that have been waiting for you all along.